Good evening. I am so honored to be here with all of you. We are only 13 days out from what might be the most important election of our lifetimes. And I have the privilege of being joined by some incredible LGBTQ leaders to talk about what is at stake in this election. We have California Senator Scott Wiener, former Houston mayor and current LGBTQ Victory Fund CEO Annise Parker, and managing director of Equality California, Tony Hoang. It is so good to see you all. I was recently reading that Mayor Pete said to a group of LGBTQ voters, "Now is the time to vote like your life depends on it." And he's right. Over the last 4 years, our community has been under constant attack. We've had to endure the rollback of Obama-era protections for transgender people, the transgender military ban, the appointment of 2, possibly 3, anti-equality justices on the Supreme Court, and the wide array of policy being ushered in under the guise of religious liberty that in reality allow for the discrimination and the further marginalization of our community in healthcare, housing, and public safety. And we all know that isn't even close to an exhaustive list of the attacks on our community. On a personal level, I want to thank our panelists and guests for joining us this evening for this important discussion. I served on a K-12 school board for 11 years, and I often think back to the battles during those years. And one of them was to help ensure our youth have access to comprehensive sexual health education, especially because of its impact specific to our LGBTQ youth. And this was way before the idea of the California Healthy Youth Act, which now mandates that all students must have access to comprehensive sexual health education. It was very difficult to ensure access to comprehensive sex ed during those years because we had to approach it from school district to school district across the state. But again, California came through with the passage of CHIA. This was in large part due to the advocacy from Planned Parenthood and many of you here this evening. As we all know, we are in such a good place here in California on many of the issues and values we care about. And CHIA is just one example of that. But in this current election, my husband Eric and I are very concerned about what's at stake for our LGBTQ community, even here in California, and especially in those states that have not been afforded many of the rights and protections that we have here in California. Now, for my first question for our guest panelists, how are you all thinking about this election? And what is top of mind for you in your advocacy work? Annise, let's start with you.
So Victory is a unique organization in that we are in every state and at every level. So we are seeing what is happening across America, and it is frightening. What's on the ballot this year is candidates, issues, our rights, and I would say, and I don't think this is hyperbole, that what's at stake is the soul of America. It is our opportunity to say to the more than 1,000 LGBTQ candidates who have run across this country and the more than 570 who are still on the November ballot that we appreciate their service, we appreciate the sacrifices they've made and the challenges they have confronted in running, but that we're going to stand with them and vote for them. We understand that in voting for these candidates, we're also voting for and on a range of issues that impact our daily lives. And as you laid out at the beginning, as a community in the last 4 years, we have been attacked over and over and over again from the White House. And then when I said that what is at stake is in my view, the soul of America. This is our opportunity to say that we are better than the vitriol and the dysfunction that is centered at the White House. We are stronger than the challenges that confront us in the COVID pandemic, and that we can also face many of the entrenched challenges and obstacles that confront multiple communities across America, such as poverty, such as racism, such as homelessness, and that we can also tackle together the big issues that confront us globally, such as climate change. We can do this together, but the first step is coming together, getting out, and voting for the people who will be in the room making those decisions. That is the most critical thing. We had a race here in Houston where I live last year. Council candidate, some 40,000 votes cast, she lost by 12 votes. We had another challenger last year that lost by 1 vote up in Massachusetts. We cannot let that happen to candidates who are ready to stand up for the issues that matter most to us.
So, Equality California represents nearly 900,000 members across the country, with obviously a big emphasis here in California and through our affiliate, Silver State Equality. For us, this election is the most important election in my lifetime, and it's certainly for many others. Our lives are literally at stake. Robert, like you mentioned, we have things like the transgender military ban, the rollback of non-discrimination protections in the Affordable Care Act for trans folks, HUD allowing trans folks to access homeless shelters, adoption, the blood ban, passing things like the Equality Act. The only way that we're going to stop the onslaught on the LGBTQ community and all the communities that we're a part of, including women, immigrants, folks of color, is that we have to elect pro-equality candidates, not just at the White House, but at the U.S. Senate, the House, but also it's really important to elect pro-equality champions at the local level. We have folks like Senator Wiener here on the call, who is a champion for our community in the state legislature. And these local candidates really matter. School board, Robert, like you mentioned, to implement these laws that we've passed here in Sacramento and other state capitals, that really falls to local jurisdictions to making sure that, the LGBTQ community is protected at the local level. So, for us, it is really important that we turn out the LGBTQ community and our allies up and down the ballot to ensure that, we come out and vote. Like Mayor Parker said, our lives are on the line. The only way, we're all going to push back and come together and turn the page on for the soul of America is that the LGBTQ community really needs to come out and vote. So for us, we're doing everything that we can in the final 2 weeks of the election to ensure that all our folks turn out, whether that's, text banking, digital ads, mail pieces, all across the board, making sure that, we turn out every single vote, because when we go to November 4th, we don't want to make sure that we, left any vote on the table. So for us, this is a really important election cycle.
Senator Wiener, before you answer the question, I just want to take this opportunity to thank you for being such a legislative champion for legislation that helps to ensure our LGBTQ rights are further protected in the state of California. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Robert. I really appreciate it. And it's an honor to be here with Mayor Parker, with Tony, really all great leaders in our community. So, I think when people are thinking about not just voting, but whether to work really hard to get other people to vote, I think it's really easy to lose sight of what the stakes are, not just globally. We know the global ramifications of climate change and these just huge, and the pandemic, but it's so important for people to boil it down to the fact that the votes that we cast and the work we do to get other people to vote has direct impacts on us, on our families, on our communities, on the people that matter in our lives. And if you just think about the fact that in 2016, just a small shift in votes in a few states would have had Hillary Clinton in the White House, and how many fewer people would have died from COVID-19 had Hillary Clinton been in the White House, and we had a science-based approach to, and not a egotistical, I'm Superman crazy approach to COVID-19. Imagine how many people's mothers would still be alive, how many people's grandmothers would still be alive, how many people's upstairs neighbors would still be alive. You just think tangibly, just a few votes, a tiny number of votes in like Wisconsin and Pennsylvania and a few other places, and tens of thousands or 100,000 or more people in this country, our family members, would still be alive. That's what it means to vote. And elections have consequences. And when you have these elections, and not just a school board race that can be decided by 1 or 10 votes, and we see that happen all the time, but presidents of the United States who are elected by a tiny number of votes in a handful of states. And so if you're deciding whether to vote yourself or whether to make calls into Michigan or Nevada or Arizona to try to persuade people, you have to think like that. Or you think like, in terms of what we're seeing of the attacks on our trans community, a community that has such outrageous rates of being murdered in terms of Black trans women, or suicide, or unemployment, or poverty, etc. And this administration is trying to just erase our trans siblings completely, just pretend that they don't exist, just obliterate them out of existence. And that's about real people's lives, or about whether people have access to healthcare, and this obsession that they have about destroying the Affordable Care Act. So it's about like tangible situations, tangible scenarios in people's own lives. But it's also important, I think sometimes people throw up their hands and say, well, everything is so big, these issues are so big, nothing's going to change, nothing's going to change. And we know that is not true. And that if we have the right people in government come January, some immediate things can change. I will tell you that the work that we do at the state level, we provide so much of the safety net to make sure that low-income seniors have the support that they need, and that foster kids don't become homeless, and to make sure that seniors and people living with disabilities have in-home healthcare workers to help support them so that they don't die. And we need to make sure that our K through 12 public schools, which need more resources now than before because of COVID, like that they have the support that they need. We're going to have to, and all the states, make massive budget cuts if we don't have a federal government that actually provides support for state and local governments, which they're not doing right now because of this president. And so it's something that tangible. Then in January, if we were to have a really robust, real rescue package for our states and our cities, that will save lives. If we were to pass immediately in January, get rid of the filibuster and pass a true Voting Rights Act, we can just structurally shore up our democracy. And if we were to go in there and fix the damage that has been done with the courts, like by not just talking about the Supreme Court, but expanding the lower courts, which they've packed so badly, that is like will tangibly improve our country. So there are things that we can do really quickly, and it impacts real people's lives. So this matters so much.
Thank you for sharing your thoughts and insight regarding this critical election. We only have a couple minutes left, but before I let you go, I want to know, where are you finding inspiration right now? And what's giving you hope for our community?
In 2018, Victory dubbed that the year of the rainbow wave. And it was really phenomenal to see so many women, LGBTQ candidates, the rainbow wave. But that was a year where we had an unprecedented number of women, of candidates of color, of LGBT candidates, of candidates who were from immigrant communities standing up for the first time and running for office. this year we're seeing what we now have to call the rainbow tsunami, because it's bigger than the rainbow wave. The people keep standing up, and there are first-time candidates running across America who have said, if no one else is going to stand up, I'm willing to stand up. And because of my unique role at Victory, I have an opportunity to interact with a lot of them. And I can tell you that American democracy is alive and well and healthy, and they're really amazing, wonderful people who are getting out and running, but they're also being supported by a lot of folks who really never felt that politics touched them, that their vote would matter. And I'm seeing more people engaged in the process than I've ever seen before.
I think for me, it's two things. It's one, the great diversity of LGBTQ candidates running here in the state of California. We have the chance to make some history with having two queer women of color joining the state Senate. Up in Sacramento, we have the chance to have the first openly gay mayor down in San Diego. And you're having folks, running in rural areas, like folks in the Central Valley running for local office, and having, the great diversity of our community running and stepping up to the plate for elected office is really inspiring to me. And then I think secondly, having people that have never been civically engaged, spending every waking moment, writing postcards in swing states, phone banking, text banking, doing what they can to making sure that people all across this country get out to vote is really inspiring, because this means that we have a new generation of folks that will be plugged in into the democratic process, and that that's just great for America moving forward. So those two things are really giving me inspiration in the final 2 weeks.
Yeah, it's really just the breadth of the engagement, and we've seen this really since 2016, but it's really accelerated now. People have never been engaged before, and also one thing that I think is different this year than 4 years ago is people understanding that we all supported, different candidates in the primary, and everyone, wanted our candidate to get the nomination, and you're always disappointed when you don't. But in the end, we have to unify, and if we don't unify, that's how, the Donald Trumps of the world are empowered. And unfortunately, in 2016, that didn't really fully happen. And I think this year, a lot more people understand that this is a matter of life and death, and that people can't let their own ego get in the way of whether people live or die. That's not acceptable. And I think more people understand that now. And so we have much more unity.
Well, I already feel a bit better after sharing this time with you all. I think it's so important that we remember. We have fought this fight before, and we have tasted victory. We have made tremendous strides in the 50 years since the Stonewall riots, and we will not go back. The late Harvey Milk said, "Rights are won only by those who make their voices heard." Make your voice heard this November by getting your ballot in. Mail it in. Take it to a drop box. Go vote in person. Choose the method that works best for you. But please make sure to vote. Recently, I saw that a shocking 1 out of 5 queer adults are not registered to vote. If you are watching and this applies to you, there is still time. In California, you can register in person up until November 3rd. Find your nearest vote center and get registered. Remember, this election is our opportunity to demand change, to stand tall and say we matter. Thank you. Now let's do this together.